The Trojan War, a documentary by Gillian Scott. Until about 100 years ago, we were positive that the Trojan War was purely legend. However, at the close of the 19th century, Heinrich Schliemann found the remains of an ancient city on the western coast of Asia Minor, seemingly destroyed around 1250 BC, the time and place where the Trojan War was depicted. It all started when Zeus heard a prophecy that Thetis, a sea nymph and the one he loved, would have a son that would surpass Zeus in his glory. Worried for his pride, he married Thetis off to Peleus, and he threw a wedding for them. All the gods and goddesses were there except for Eris, the goddess of strife. Eris was stopped at the door by Hermes. Enraged, Eris threw her gift, the apple of discord, on the floor. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all wanted the apple. They asked Zeus, but Zeus told them to ask Paris, the prince of Troy. Hera offered him political powers and promised him he would be ruler of Asia. Athena promised him wisdom and great skills in battle. But Aphrodite promised him Helen, the most beautiful woman in all the world. Paris chose Aphrodite. Enraged, Hera and Athena became sworn enemies of the entire Trojan race. Aphrodite fulfilled her promise and made a plan. She disguised Paris as a diplomatic emissary, and Paris went to Sparta. Helen happily welcomed him, while her husband, meanwhile, was away in Crete burying his uncle Thyestes. The god of love, Eros, shot an arrow at Helen. She fell in love with Paris, and the two ran off to Troy together. Meanwhile discovered what happened, and he and Odysseus went to get her back, but failed. He and his brother Agamemnon called upon rulers of Greek lands: Boeotia, Phocia, Euboea, Athens, Argos, Corinth, Arcadia, Sparta, Kephallonia, Crete, Rhodes, Magnesia, and Cyclades to help him regain his wife. They all gathered at the port of Aulis, where there were about 100,000 people, 1,186 ships, and some Greek heroes such as Achilles, Patroclus, Diomedes, Odysseus, Nestor, and Ajax. At the port, they made a sacrifice to Apollo. He sent an omen. A snake slithered up from an altar and ate a mother sparrow and 9 babies before it was turned to stone. This signifies the war would last 9 years, ending at the 10th. When they tried to begin their journey, they could not because there was no wind. Calchas realized this was because Agamemnon killed one of Artemis' sacred deer. Artemis demanded that Agamemnon's daughter, Iphigenia, be sacrificed. At first he declined, but he eventually agreed. Agamemnon tricked his wife Clytemnestra and Iphigenia to come to Aulis so Iphigenia could marry Achilles. They arrived at Aulis and realized what was going on. Clytemnestra cursed Agamemnon, but Iphigenia accepted her fate and placed herself on the altar. Just as Calchas was about to sacrifice her, Artemis substituted Iphigenia for a deer. Artemis then took her to Taurus, where she became the goddess's high priestess. After that, the winds picked up and they carried on their journey. Before they actually made it to Troy, they accidentally arrived in Mysia. When they really got to Troy, they were all reluctant to get off the ship, for a prophecy foretold the first Greek to step off would be the first Greek to die in battle. Odysseus went first, but threw his shield on the ground and stepped on that. However, Protesilaus went after him and stepped on the ground. Protesilaus did indeed die first, in a single combat with the Trojan prince Hector. Although the Trojans had help from many allies such as Carians, Halizones, Caucones, Lycians, Maeonians, Mysians, Paeonians, Paphlagonians, Pelasgians, Phrygians, and Thracians, the amount of people fighting for Troy was roughly 1/10 of the men fighting for Greece. However, the Greeks only spent the first 9 years destroying neighboring countrysides, for the Trojan walls held out. On the 10th year, the priest of Apollo, Chryses, asked for the return of his daughter Chryses, who had been taken as a concubine. They refused, and Chryses prayed to Apollo, who then inflicted the Greek army with plague. They then returned Chryses, and Agamemnon took Achilles' concubine as his own. Enraged, Achilles refused to fight and asked his mother Thetis to obtain a promise from Zeus that if Agamemnon did not return his favorite concubine Briseis, then the whole Greek army would be defeated. Although the Greeks did fine without Achilles at first, the missing hero caused Greeks to lose many battles, and at one point the Trojans nearly burned their ships. Patroclus, Achilles' best friend, was killed by Hector, thus causing Achilles to swear vengeance against Hector. Achilles once again joined the battle, and Briseis was returned. He eventually managed to kill Hector, but refused to return the body to the Trojans for a proper burial. He instead tied his body to his chariot and rode it around, desecrating the noble's body. He eventually returned it when King Priam begged for his son's return. Achilles later died when he was hit in the heel by a poisonous arrow shot by Paris. The arrow was guided by Apollo and was the hero's only vulnerability. Paris was later killed by Philoctetes using Heracles' bow. In one big conflict in the war, the armies stand opposite each other until they decide that Paris and Menelao, the two men who want Helen's heart, must face off in a single combat battle. Paris is overcome and is only saved when Aphrodite intervenes. When Agamemnon pushes for the duel to go on, the Trojan Pandara shoots an arrow at Menelao, breaking the peace. Odysseus began to think of a plan. He asked Epeus, a master carpenter and pugilist, to build a giant hollow wooden horse. A few soldiers hid inside the horse on Odysseus' instructions. The Greeks outside of the horse led it to the Trojans' gate, leaving behind Sinon to convince the Trojans that the Greeks had tried to kill him and that the horse was a tribute to Athena. Sinon told them that the Greeks wanted them to burn it to disrespect the goddess. Cassandra, the daughter of King Priam, warned against the horse, along with Laocoon, a priest. Laocoon threw a spear at the horse to reveal it was hollow, and the Trojans were about to burn it when a sea monster came up and ate Laocoon and his two sons. This was treated as an omen to take the horse in. When they left, the Greeks burned their camp and sailed to the nearby island of Tenedos. The Trojans brought in the horse and began feasting and celebrating. Later in the night, the Greeks sailed back to Troy. Sinon opened the door to the horse, and the Greeks and the horse opened the door to Troy for the other Greeks. In the battle that followed, a large number of soldiers lost their lives, but soon enough Troy was taken down. The Greeks burned and ransacked the city and carried off the women and children to use as slaves. Many gods took great interest in the war. Poseidon, Hera, and Athena aided the Greeks, while Aphrodite and Ares favored the Trojans. Zeus and Apollo, although frequently involved in the action, remained indefinite. Many Greeks angered gods by destroying or disrespecting temples or sacred grounds. This meant that even though they won, the majority of Greeks either never came home or came home after many troubles and adventures. Homer, Herodotus, Sophocles, and Virgil were few of the many ancient writers who famously wrote about the war. The conflict of the Trojan War was that Menelaus's wife, Helen, had been stolen from him. The compromise of the Trojan War was that Helen was returned to Menelao. Thanks to the following sources: